Welcome to episode 39 of The Liz McMullen Show. My most wonderful guest is Jessie Chandler. Welcome to The Liz McMullen Show.
Well, thank you, Liz.
You are hailing from the Twin Cities?
Yes, I am.
So you work in a nifty bookstore. What is it called?
I do. I work now like once a week most of the time at a small independent mystery bookstore called Once Upon a Crime. And it's actually an award-winning independent. The Mystery Writers of America awarded it the Raven Award last year, which is a really big deal for independent bookstores. So I feel pretty lucky.
Which is one of the reasons why I mention it, because I am a huge supporter of small businesses and indie businesses, and it's not easy to keep bookstores open these days, especially with the onslaught of ebooks.
Yes, that is so true, and it's been amazing. Pat and Gary are the husband-wife owners of Once Upon a Crime, and they're fantastic. They support other local businesses, and they manage to run their store without a computer. So there's no computer to look anything up. There's no inventory list, nothing.
Shut the front door. How do they reorder things?
I'm serious. So it makes it really challenging when people come in asking me for stuff, because I'm like, well, let me try over here, maybe over there, and let me look on my phone for that. Hang on a second. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's hidden treasure, mystery bookstore. Where do you find the book? Well, it's a mystery. Let's try and follow the clues.
Exactly. Yep.
So you have a series, the Shay O'Hanlon Capers. How do you keep on keeping on with a series about capers without it seeming improbable?
Well, I think, honestly, it is pretty improbable, but I think the key to improbability is if you're able to convince your reader that using that, the suspension of disbelief and just going with the story, if you can make them buy into that, they'll go for quite a while. And I hope they're still going with me.
You're such a fantastically colorful writer. And I was joking off camera, just kidding. I was joking that hyperbole is your middle name. There's just so much fantastical language that you use, which is fun.
Yeah, I have had people come up to me and say, I didn't know you knew that word. And it's not like I intend to put these kind of things in there. They just sort of happen.
So when you're writing, are you alone in a room? Do you have music in the background? What gets you in the right space to write? Well,
the biggest right space to write for me is a coffee shop someplace. And that is, it doesn't matter if there's a lot of people. I don't care what the background noise is. If I need to, I can stick my headphones on, and I tend to listen to classical music because if I listen to words, it kind of messes me up. But if I try to work at home, I've got two dogs, my partner, my wife, Betty, laundry to do, and many other things that need attention that I can't work well at home. So coffee shops are the way I tend to roll. I should try libraries. Maybe that would work too.
Do you always use a computer, or are you sometimes writing things longhand?
I start off every book I will outline. You've got your outliners, and then you've got your seat of the pants people. And a lot of the seat of the pants people think outlining would just be too rigid and they wouldn't have any creativity. But if I didn't have my outline that I can veer off of, I don't have to be locked into exactly everything I have down on the paper. But if I didn't have that, I would never get from point A to Z. I would be at point A, and then I'd be back at point negative A, and then maybe B over there. I'd never finish. So,
yeah, writing calculus is just terrible. So, and I think it's important to have an anchor when you're writing so many circumstances that seem absurd and where things go off script. And I imagine that you have to wrangle your tangents to make sure everything keeps on chugging along.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything. But the bigger part of that even is keeping track from book to book. You should have a character Bible. And if you don't have a character Bible as a writer, I really encourage you and anyone else who wants to write to do so. Because as soon as you hit books 3, 4, whatever, there will be very simple things that you will forget about characters, about places, about cars they drive. I remember just recently I was trying to figure out if Shay knew how to cook. I couldn't remember if I addressed that. And I don't know that I have found that answer. I don't think she can. And I sort of made it continue that way. But goofy things like that you don't even think about pop up.
Well, you have, I mean, like your characters are so complex and they have so many idiosyncrasies that, you know, you'd have to have the mama daddy of all Bibles to keep it all together because, yeah, so.
It's complicated, yeah. It does get complicated.
Yes. So your first book, Bingo Barge Murderer, that was easy for me to say.
Yes.
I
just have to say, it started out as Bingo! ! It's murder. And I still think that's a better title. I was overruled, however.
Yeah, I kind of like both. Bingo Barge Murder. Dun, 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 dun. And the most fabulous ways you have of introducing characters, including Coop, who's Shay's best friend from ways back, is that he scares the shit out of Shay and like grabs her and drags her into the darkness because he's got a problem on his hands. So could you let the listeners know what's the main dig? What's the big problem in the first book?
The biggest problem is that Coop's boss, Kinky, who has very kinky tastes, is dead. And the object that killed him is a great big bronzed bingo dauber, which met his head in a very unfortunate way. And that bingo dauber has all kinds of Coop's fingerprints on it from the day before. And Coop, of course, is innocent, but we have to prove that. So as the story goes, we wind up with a couple of bumbling mafiosos popping up, looking for a truckload of stolen nuts. The junkyard dog shows up, and then all hell breaks loose. I was hoping, when I first learned about the nuts, I'm thinking this has to be a euphemism for some illegal cargo of sorts, something smuggled. And then it turned out to be actual nuts. Oh, yeah. You know, when I was deciding I was going to write a book, initially I was surfing the internet trying to find some topic, and I ran across this article about nuts in California that are actually truly being stolen, big truckloads of nuts, and they're worth like $500,000 a piece. And then they're often shipped down South America, through the black market and sold. And I thought, that is so ridiculous. I need to write a book about it. And so there you go.
I was like, where the fuck did you get this from?
Yeah, I know.
So, you know, and you heard it here, folks. There's some crazy nuts going on.
There's nutty people stealing nuts.
Yes.
Real nuts, not even nuts hiding things. Just nuts.
You know what's really interesting is how, because it's not a mystery, it's not like a Motor City Mystery, by Teresa Zmansky. It's a caper, which has, all sorts of bumbling and unbelievable things and, just crazy ass circumstances. And I'd like to know where did the phrase, the nickname Tenacious Protector come from?
Well, initially when I created Shay, I tried to create her very much not like me, because so many people say, oh, your main character is you, blah, blah. Well, I didn't want that. Mm-hmm. And so I started creating things for Shay that I didn't like. Like, I hate coffee. Mm-hmm. I like to write in coffee shops, but no way in hell am I working in a coffee shop, nor would I want to own one ever. Mm-hmm. And so went down the road. And eventually little things like me did start to pop in, like she starts writing on her hand. Well, I do that all the time. Another thing that I seem to have a problem with is when I do have friends or family who are threatened, or if something's gone on with them in some way, I kind of lose my mind a little bit, and I'll step in and stand up for them if I can, or whatever. And I thought, well, I needed Shay to have some sort of a glitch like that would be interesting and would pop in and be unexpected. So I kind of gave her that sort of a personality. And then I needed something to call it, and that's where the Tenacious Protector came from. So
it's just like, I remember thinking, Tenacious Protector, that's wordy.
Yeah, you know, and I thought that was a really stupid name. But I left it in the first book. So then when I turned it into my publisher, I was fully ready to change it to something else or take it out. And they left it. So now I'm stuck with it. It just is.
Because, you know, Shay is a nice guy, kind of girl, and a good person, and seems to have her stuff together. But she takes umbrage when somebody that she loves is in danger, to the point where she gets all like Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, and what I love about her that is also important for the caper concept is that she never gives up, even when something seems so hopeless. She's like, I got to figure out my way out. I got to figure out, you know, what I can do. You know, like they're in a van. They're zip tied. They can't do anything, and there's a bad mobster with like a gun at them. This is terrible. You know, they're stuck, but not Shay. She's not stuck. She's like, I'm gonna tackle him.
She might be momentarily stuck, but she'll find a way around it. So it's all good.
She has a can-do attitude.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I learned really early on with writing is always keep throwing trouble at your main character. Keep them in trouble. And that's kind of why Shay's always in trouble, is because I have that in the back of my mind. And so poor Shay, I do feel bad for her sometimes.
You have like really awesome characters, and let's see. Of course, I'm trying to like pluck the name out of my... Oh, here we go. That's why I keep notes.
That's good.
Yeah, it's like I can't be a pantser, complete pantser when it comes to being an interviewer, even though I just go with whatever pops in my head. I do have notes when I read, because I'm awful with names. And one of my favoriteest characters that you have that's in every book is Rocky.
Yeah, Rocky. I love Rocky.
Can you tell us a little bit about my favoriteest man, Rocky?
Your stud muffin?
My little muffin o' love.
Yeah. Well, Rocky came to me because when I initially started writing again, I'd run into NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, the month of November, and it's a thing on the internet. And one of the things they suggested was, what kind of stuff do you like to read? What do you like to see in books? And that's what you should put in your own book. So I really enjoy elderly people. I enjoy challenged people. I enjoy regular folks. And so Eddie came about because of that. I wanted to put an elderly gal in there, and Rocky came about because of that. And he is a conglomeration of... years back, I had a friend, M.B. Panici, actually, who's going to be coming out with her first book in October, I believe, called Saving Morgan. She worked at a group home for Prader-Willi syndrome folks, which is it's got more to do with it than what I'm going to be able to explain, but it has something to do with the fact they cannot shut off their hunger switch, and they will just keep eating and eating and eating. And it's almost like a Down syndrome with this thing that's not correct, but it's kind of like what it is. But these people tend to have certain characteristics. They're often a little bit shorter. They're kind of round. They kind of bounce around. And there was this one kid, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he had wanted to go out for some Diet Cherry 7-Up. And so Mary Beth and I and her partner who wasn't her partner at the time, but she is now April, took him in April's convertible to the grocery store looking for this pop. And he started spouting out about these different facts, these different things in very, statement sentences. That tree over there is very green, isn't it, Jessie? And he would kind of nod. So I had that in my head. And then back, I don't know, 2006, 2007, there was a PSA that was running both on the radio and on TV, and it involved a guy. So you'd see this guy from waist up. It was kind of wintertime. He had on this big poofy jacket and this aviator hat pulled on real low, and he's walking along, and he's saying really weird things like, hot dogs. We like hot dogs. And a little further on, he might say, oh, biker. Motorcycles are dangerous. He might say stuff like that. And then as the camera panned back, you realize that it's actually a grown man who's pulling a little
wagon?
Wagon, yes, with a little boy in it. And what he's doing is he's showing him how to read. And that's why he's saying, hot dogs, we like hot dogs. He's telling the little kid this. Mm-hmm. And it was just the cutest thing. But I kind of combined both of those ideas and I made Rocky.
You know, in some ways it reminded me of the little boy in Jerry Maguire.
Yeah. You know, I didn't think of that, but yeah.
It's like the human head weighs, like, I don't know, 15 pounds or whatever. Like, he was always popping out with these, like, factoids.
Facts, yes.
And one of my favorite things that ever happened in the series is when he meets his tulip.
Yes, Tulip. Yes. That's awesome. He does marry Tulip, and I did a short little thing about that, but...
Yeah, that was in the hide and snake murder, and they managed to get themselves to New Orleans, and they lose Rocky, and it turns out Rocky found the love of his life, Tulip, who can make the little balloon animals.
Yep.
And intellectually, they're in the same place, and they like riff off each other. They're like an awesome little couple. And you think it's over, and you feel so bad because, like, I'm in love. So he found her, and then they went back to the Twin Cities where they live, and then he can be with Tulip. But he was not thwarted. Somebody taught him how to use Facebook.
That's right. Facebook fixed all.
So with getting back to our dead kinky man, he is one smarmy fellow.
He is skanky, isn't he?
He is just so all kinds of nasty, including having a hidden camera in his office so that he can make blue movies of his revolting self, having sex with whatever depraved human being is willing to prostrate themselves to him.
Yes. Sat on that couch.
Oh, it's like, in general, when there's gambling, there's always, some kind of sleazy element to it. But you've truly scraped the bottom of the barrel when you're gambling on this floating bingo palace. Bingo's not going to make a lot of money. So he's extra kind of smarmy, and I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah, I worked in bingo for 17 years, and but not on a floating barge in an actual bingo hall. And I saw it, kind of go from dumpy to rising up and doing really well, and kind of falling back down again. And there's always, especially with the players, something going on.
Goodness gracious me. So one of the awesome characters, which you mentioned a bit before, is Eddie.
Yeah.
In my head, I was saying Edie, but that's okay.
Other people have done that too, and I'm perfectly fine with it either way. I guess I think of Eddie in my head, so that's probably what I'll say, but I am open for interpretation, not a problem.
I guess that's just my elderly translator. Like, that's what I kind of think of, like, like Edie's ice cream.
Edie is much more appropriate in, how you kind of feel agey with a name, so that would fit better, yeah.
Yeah, I dug her, and she had some special caper shoes that she her lucky shoes.
She does have her lucky shoes.
And
her whacker.
And her whacker. Her little baby Louisville Slugger. And she had bright green, are they like high tops?
Yeah, they're like Converse high tops, those just canvasy.
That's like a beacon.
Yes.
When you're
trying to be all stealthy in the dark, his glowing feet.
Oh, you must have a great cover artist because they did a good job of having that cute little ginormous boxer and
Yes, I've got a great cover artist. Her name is Lisa Novak, and she's part of Midnight Ink, my publisher. Mm-hmm. And they came to me and they said, "Well, what would you like to see of your covers?" And I said, "Well, I want something bright because color to me makes all the difference in the world. Mm-hmm. I want something bright. I would like to see, at least on the first book, I'd like to see the dog, something to do with bingo." And I blink a couple times, and they send me this kind of mock-up with a dog and bingo balls, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I love you." And they've just continued from there. They've been fantastic.
You are very, very fortunate.
Yes.
Because oftentimes covers don't really gel with what's happening in the book.
Yes.
And a friend of mine, Annie Marquette, she actually has a deal when she publishes things self-publishing and also with a publisher, but she has a deal where she makes her own covers.
That sometimes is a very good thing.
So she negotiated so that she's in charge of the covers, and she always budgets to be able to do that so that her covers are a really good reflection. Because I was reading blogs about contracts with publishers and the ways that it often is rigged on the side of the publisher. Mm-hmm. Including like first refusal, and oftentimes that's problematic because they may sit on a book. Mm-hmm. There's no time window that they need to turn it around, and one of the other things that got detailed into different contracts is there are so many things that are under like the publisher's control, but let's say they don't promote your third book the way that they promoted like your first and second, including including a cover that doesn't even remotely relate to the contents of the book. And this was a mainstream author, and he said, "Well, look at this picture, it's supposed to be a futuristic green society, and this is just so random. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It looks modern and dirty and filthy." Like how a lot of the futuristic...
Yes, yeah.
So he's like, this doesn't match. And they didn't really spend much time, promoting it. Yet, I'm responsible for my behavior, but there's not a lot of stuff in contracts where the publishers promise to do particular things, including promoting the stuff. Which doesn't mean there are good publishers out there, of course. But when I looked at your cover, I was like, your publisher really cares.
Yeah, they do. It doesn't always mesh with what people want. I've known other authors with my publisher who have hated their covers, and yet they've had to go with them. But they almost always, the publisher's been willing to try and tweak things to make it more likable to the author. Midnight Ink as a whole, I mean, obviously they're a publisher, and they do, pad things to their benefit. But I think that as it goes, they're very fair.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I had just read that article and seen like the cover art that one person created and the cover art that another person created, and he's like, "You see the difference between these two things? This is what it should have been." And
yep.
Even though the trite saying, don't judge a book by its cover, oftentimes if you don't know an author, if you're unfamiliar with the story, the spine has to be interesting, and the cover has to be interesting, and the blurb in the back has to be not vague. It has to be enough to get you interested. Because for me, I'd sit down on the floor in a bookstore because I'm classy.
I love it. That's the way it should be.
I sit down on the floor and I read the first page, and I can't tell you how many times it's been true that if I can't get through the first page, I just put it away. And I'm so glad for that opportunity. And I'm also glad that Amazon now gives people sneak peeks.
Right. you're an anomaly in readers in a good way. Most of the time, I believe the statistic is something like you have maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds at the most that people will look at your book. So you need to have something that catches them just like that. To have somebody actually sit down and take a look at the first page and, maybe try and read it, that's something. That's good.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it's so I don't waste my money. There's even when I was looking for books to learn how to write myself, and I'm glad I had my little sit down method.
Yeah.
Because so many of them are for crap.
Yes, it's true. Yeah.
And they're redundant, and they're not helpful. And I was trying to learn more about nonfiction, how to do a documentary, how to write,
Sure.
That kind of, a memoir. And I realized that there was maybe 1 or 2 chapters different from the exact same manual for writing fiction, like as if they only tweaked 2 chapters to it. And I was just like, this is terrible. So you have to have a gander. You actually have to read the first few pages. You have to see if it works for you, because otherwise you can end up with books that you're like, ah.
Yes, and they're not cheap, so that's very wise.
I wrote with pen in your book. Oh my God.
That's okay. You know what? I don't think a book is truly and well loved until the spine is broken, until the pages are bent, and until you write in it.
So, when I was younger, in my teens and in college, because I am bubbly and klutzy, so my little mascot was Tigger.
Ah, nice.
And there's a Tigger reference in the Bingo Barge Murder. Cut straight to the chase, why don't you? I wondered why the penalty for lying through my teeth to the cops. However, my tenacious protector side had started bouncing around like Tigger on steroids. Boing, boing,
That was
boing.
a pretty good line.
Because there's so many things that get really visual. For those of you, when you read her stuff, it's like having a little movie going on in front of you. And gosh, I'm actually really surprised that she ended up getting hooked up with JT.
Yeah, I didn't know initially if she would wind up, if the relationship would keep going or not. It obviously does, but I didn't know at first.
It's so improbable. Somebody so straight-laced with somebody who just cannot keep their ass out of trouble.
Yep.
And can I just say, poor Shay's face. She's going to be like Frankenstein by the time you get her into like book 7. With zipper-like, scars everywhere.
We'll hope that it's a good person who, sews her back, has a good hand.
I'm like, her poor noggin. And that incredible.
It's kind of funny. You talk about similarities or differences between your main character.
Uh-huh.
I too am a klutz, and we're just installing new counters and new cabinets. Mm-hmm. And I wound up bonking my head the day before yesterday pretty hard. And so I got the lecture from Betty about being aware of my surroundings and what's going on. And so she went off to work, and 2 of my friends, Monty and Angel, came. And I'm explaining to them what I did and how dumb I was, and I bashed my head. And so about 3 minutes later, I'm kind of in the same area. I'm bent over doing something, and I turn around, and bam, I bashed my head again on the same thing in the same place, and I split it open. And I'm bleeding. I didn't have to get stitches or anything, but yeah.
That's just so fantastic.
It's pathetically horrible.
When I was a little girl, they used to call me Miss Spill.
Okay.
Because I still knock shit over to the point where
I feel for you. I understand.
To the point where I'm hyper vigilant and still I end up to knock things over. For example, before I had my Mac, I had a Dell, right? Mm-hmm. And next to my bed, Because I have classy furniture. I had my Foot Locker from college, and I would put my drinks there. And I also would put my computer there when I wasn't using it. Problem was, I was not thinking when I was moving my comforter. My comforter knocks over my drink onto my computer. And it ends up, somewhat rescued because I have a MacGyver from my partner.
Thank God for those partners who can do those kind of things.
Oh my God, I don't know. And so then after that happened and I got a new computer, we actually got this shelving unit. It was just Tupperware shelves, whatever. So I would put my computer safely in a shelf so that nothing could spill on it. Because I look lots. Oh my Lord.
Has it worked?
Yes.
Excellent.
My computer has been alive 4 years with no mishaps.
That's really good.
All right. So hide and snake murder.
Moving right along.
Yeah, I don't like segues. Anyway, so Baz the Spaz.
Poor Baz. Yeah.
And he just doesn't stop doing things that make you want to strangle him.
No, he's a pretty crappy character.
He's very consistent, though.
True. Yeah, that's very true.
The shit.
Yes, the big shit.
It's like, I am going to wreck my life and everybody's life around me because I nicked something I shouldn't, which means stolen, for those of you who don't know what that means. So I stole something. Well, I didn't steal it, I was just borrowing it, my ass.
That's right.
And he still ends up stealing stuff. And I'm like, what is wrong with you?
He needs therapy.
Dude, it's like you're in hot water. Why are you doing something else? My God.
Yep. Yeah, he's just, there's no redemption for that boy.
No.
Maybe jail.
Yeah, even still. I mean, and the one thing that Shay has always in all these books is that she, no matter how frustrated she can be or how ridiculous she thinks other things are, she's got a huge heart. Yeah, so even though they should not have, they should have let him swing in the wind, so to speak, and literally at one point,
left him hanging in the garage upside down.
I know, literally swinging in the wind.
Yep.
She should have just let him, but she's a good person, so even though he's a shit, she has to kind of help.
She's got that compulsion, maybe she needs therapy too. I'm not sure.
I don't know if it's like some weird mutant form of codependence. I don't know.
It could be.
Mutant codependence.
She's got issues.
But she's so much fun. But I could tell that, if I were JT's a cop, very straight-laced, by-the-book cop. And I'm like, how could she deal with such a crazy girlfriend? She can't even leave her alone for a minute before some kind of crazy-ass caper action goes on.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, poor JT. Maybe she's the one who needs therapy. I don't know. Poor her. Yeah.
But apparently...
She's a trooper.
Yeah, Shay's cute. Apparently she's got cute ears.
Yeah, ears.
You're in trouble up to the top of your cute ears. Yeah, she's cute. She's cute, all right. What I also dig is that you would think somebody with a big heart would not be the same person who's got commitment issues.
This is true. Yeah. But you need to give your characters some troubles. So here you go.
I gotta give you some lady trouble.
Yeah, you need some lady trouble.
So, our Shay has a gig. She owns a coffee shop with a badass little sprightly woman.
She's kind of cool, isn't she? I like Kate.
And so she's a little. She likes to put her hand in the cookie jar, so to speak.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the movie Moonstruck?
I did a long time ago.
All right, so it's a vulgar saying that Rose, which was Olympia Dukakis' character, is talking to a professor. And at several different points in the movie, you see this professor on a date with one of his students. And he always ends up with a drink either in his face or in his lap because he's not taking them seriously. And they're like, this isn't a joke. And then they go, you know. And so at one point, Olympia Dukakis' character sees him. And she's just like, what's wrong with you, right? So, but eventually he kind of invites himself to sit down and have dinner with her. And she goes to him, don't shit where you eat.
Okay.
Which means don't fuck your students, it's where you work. And
yes. Somebody ought to talk to her.
So, you know, don't screw your patrons at your coffee shop because it may come back to bite you in the ass. But apparently she's just too awesome at slinging coffee that, you know, she hasn't gotten into that kind of trouble. But on the same vein, Shay has the opposite rule that she tries to keep a lockdown on, that she does not ever date a patron until sexy detective pants comes into the picture.
I love that. That's a great description.
I have a way with words. Sexy detective pants.
Yes, that's super.
I also love Shay's endeavors into lying. Since it's something that, you know, she just wouldn't normally do, but in the midst of a caper, does a lot of lying.
She does. And she's often surprised that she pulls it off.
I know. One of the notes that I have down for the hide and seek murder was liar, liar, pants on fire.
She did a lot of lying in that, didn't she?
Oh my God. Totally off the cuff. Yeah, I'm a scruffy looking person with no ID, but yeah, I'm working with the government. Need to make sure your storage facility, blah, 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 blah.
As I'm fixated on your large bowl that keeps quivering.
That was just so incongruous. What was the character's name again?
Rita.
So Rita is this, you know, upper crust, very well-groomed, wealthy woman, yet she has an obscenely large mole with bristling hair. Ew! And even Shay's like, you know, with the kind of money she has, I don't know why she hasn't had that damn thing cut off.
Yeah. Give me a pair of clippers, I'll do it myself.
I can't look at you any longer with that milk done on your mouth. It's terrible. You have a lot of fun names like Hunk and Donnie and Thomas Tormenta.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Can you tell my listeners what is the plot for Hide and Sneak Murder?
Well, Baz the Spaz is a duct cleaner who goes into people's houses and cleans their ducts, and of course gives himself 5-finger discounts on different items within the house and then leaves. And this one time he winds up filching a stuffed neon green snake, and he brings it home and forgets about it. And a few days later he gets a visit from some serious thugs, and he's busy playing video games with a friend of his, and they wind up killing the friend and tell him that the same will happen to him if he doesn't return the snake, and he can't find it. The snake has gone down to New Orleans with Rocky and Eddie, and Eddie's friend Agnes. Agnes is Baz's aunt, and Baz lives with Agnes a lot of the time because Baz can't keep enough money to keep a place of his own. And Agnes gave the stuffed snake to Rocky. Well, these thugs want that snake, and so Agnes wasn't happy with Baz when she left because he's a shit. And so he goes to Shay because he knew that Eddie would give Shay all the information to contact them while they were down in New Orleans. And so he convinces Shay to try to get a hold of Eddie and Agnes, and Shay for her part, doesn't feel comfortable giving information to Baz because if there's thugs out there, they might get a hold of it. So they meet, they talk. Shay tries to get a hold of Eddie and crew, and she can't get a hold of them. So they start getting nervous, and as time goes on, they wind up going down to New Orleans looking for them, thinking something's happened. They wind up getting down there, finding Eddie and Agnes, and Rocky is missing. And pretty quick, he's found, he's brought back, and he's got this stuffed neon green snake that he's named Doodlebug with him. And he's also met Tulip, so he's very excited. And they get up to the room, and Baz wants that snake back. And they
have a tug of war, the snake gets pulled open, and money like a piñata, comes out.
Spews out, yes. Well, now we kind of have an idea why these thugs may be after this snake, because it's got money in. And the bad guys show up. They are wanting to get rid of the evidence, which is all of the people, Shay and Eddie and Coop and Agnes and Rocky and Baz, because they know something's going on with this snake. And what it all boils down to, it ties into a Mexican drug cartel who is using these toys to ship drugs up from Mexico and then ship back money.
So they have this amazing vehicle. I want to go to this toy store that you created. Can you tell
me too, if it really exists.
I know. Can you tell my listeners about this kick-ass toy store that is for all ages of gamers?
Yes, well, it's called the Hands-On Toy Company, and it's what a toy store would be in my world if I could make a toy store. Basically, you walk in, and it does cover all ages. You walk in, and there's this big kind of winding path that you can follow, and the goods, as you go through it, kind of go up in years. So you might walk into the really small kids section, kids toy section, and all of the toys are on display and playable, so you can try them out. And so as you walk down the row, you go maybe from toddlers to tweens, and then from tweens to teens, and from teens you've got the video games and all of this, and then they have actually a video game nook, if you want to call it that, where people play video games and also role-playing games, like Magic or Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of stuff. And they've kind of created a little, like it looks like a cave or a castle, so it has all this ambience and stuff.
I want to play there. I want to go to their cafe and whatever, sample their crazy confections that they probably have that are thematic.
Yes.
And the vehicle for smuggling is toys, and this is a kick-ass toy place, and Shay and Coop would be very unhappy to learn that the owner, who is a well-known philanthropist, they were hoping that he was not also a crook.
Exactly.
And there are two other that you mention in there when I guess they're philanthropists and they turned out to have Ponzi schemes.
Yes. And you know what? If I could remember more about it, I'd tell you, but I can't.
My memory has failed me. Your memory has failed you. We will move on.
Yes, let's shall.
Okay, let's shall. And of course, during hide and snake murder, we don't have a handy dandy, sexy detective pants to help out.
No, that was the worst thing about hooking Shay up with a cop, because cops can help, and you don't want Shay to have help. So then I had to keep getting rid of her. So poor JT.
JT was doing some specialized training and was starting to freak out and figure out if she could just leave and come back because she hasn't heard from her girlfriend in 2 days and something must be wrong.
Yes, knowing Shay, something is wrong.
Damn straight it is. And basically, the person who was in charge of the program, I think they were, were they at Quantico?
Yeah, they were at Quantico.
Okay, and basically, unless you're bleeding out the eyes, you're going to have to actually stay or not be invited back. And so she
Yeah.
had to stick around. But I was like, ugh, poor JT. And then she comes home and sees what a mess her girlfriend has turned into. Oh my God, I still feel so bad for Jay's poor face. She probably was like, my girl, what is this? What happened to your head? And what I love, which was absurd, was that Agnes went astray during one of the Caper investigations, and you find her snookered in a closet drinking vodka.
That was the best. That was one of the most fun scenes ever to write.
And what I love is like Edie and Agnes are always sniping with each other, and she's trying to get the huge honking bottle of top shelf vodka out of her hand, and as she's tugging, she loses her grip and swacks really hard Shay in the head, which she had already injured her head previously, so she's starting to bleed profusely and thinking about the DNA she's leaving behind.
Yeah, that's true.
I want to know, why don't any of these damn people have proper alarm systems?
That's a good question. If they had proper alarm systems, my bumbling people couldn't get in.
No, exactly. It's just like, in this day and age, they wouldn't have like some kind of crazy system going on.
You would think, especially if it were the house that had, all kinds of smuggling evidence in it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's one of those things I beg of you to use your sense of...
Please suspend disbelief.
Yeah, exactly.
You are on the crazy train called Shay O'Hanlon Caper.
Right. The crazy train. I love it.
You're on the crazy train. Keep your arms and legs inside. You can't be trusted. Oh, my Lord. So when you decide to bring JT back, you fuck with her in the Pickle in the Middle murder. Oh, my God. Why did you do that to her? And tell my listeners what the hell you did to the poor Detective Sexy Pants.
Well, I needed to get rid of Detective Sexy Pants again. So, in order to get rid of Detective Sexy Pants, I needed to get rid of her. What better way than to lock her up? So I have her framed for murder, and she gets arrested for murder.
And she's in quite the pickle.
She is in a pickle, yes. The body that is found there at the Renaissance Festival, and there's a dead body that's actually in one of the privies with a great big pickle stuffed in his mouth. And probably 10 minutes prior, Shay had sent JT off to go find her a pickle.
And when she basically, I'll set this up for y'all listeners because this is nasty. Shay has to pee, and she's been waiting for her girlfriend to come back with the pickle, and waiting to the point where she will not be denied. She has to pee.
It's time to go.
And it's time to go. So she finds a porta potty or privy that was handicap stall so that she can bring the dogs in with her when she goes, because she's got one dog that loves to sniff crotch that they inherited from a previous book, and they have poor dog called Dog, as in D-A-W W-G-A dog. Who is ashamed of the other dog. Like, how dare you do this to me? Anyway, so they're all scuttling into the bathroom, and they discover the dead body. And at first they're like, what's going on? He had a pickle in his mouth, and then she realizes that he's missing the back of his head, and so she like scuttles out, and then brings out the wipies and wipes down the dog's noz that had actually been in the crotch of the dead guy. And all that's happening, and then she realizes once the adrenaline is gone that she still has to pee like a racehorse. So she finally gets permission to go pee, and JT comes on the scene, and she's like, where has she been? And she's trying to get past the cops who are blocking her. That's my girlfriend, I have to go see her. So she gets through, and then suspiciously she's got bits and pieces of pickle, and she smells like pickle juice. And that's the reason why she gets she gets the cuffs put on her, other than the fact that the detective had a bone to pick with her in the first place. So it was his shining moment to slap cuffs on her.
Yes. Yeah. Poor JT.
What I thought was interesting vehicle is to get to know JT better about things that she wouldn't talk about most likely. And Shay has to stick her nose in to figure out who had a stake in and would want to kill this guy, and basically trying to figure out how to spring her girlfriend. In the meantime, she learns a lot about JT.
I really did want to, even in the prior book, delve more into JT, but because of the circumstance and by me not wanting her in the picture, it was hard to do. So I tried to figure out a way that I could explore JT's past and some of JT's history and still sort of keep her tied up where she wouldn't wind up being as much in the picture, because this path needed to be taken on by Shay and Shay alone. So it turned out pretty well, I think, as far as being able to really get into what made JT tick.
I have a quote for you, which is brief. And this is when Kate's when she's telling what's it called? When Shay's telling her partner Kate what the trouble was, and Kate goes, Kate's eyebrows rose so quickly they almost flew off her forehead. Fantastic. That's not just surprise. That is just beyond startlement. Like her eyebrows nearly went airborne. I mean, that's some serious shit right there.
She's shocked. There's no doubt about it.
See, folks, that's where you show and don't tell that somebody is intensely shocked.
Yeah, just make the eyebrows fly off, and that takes care of it.
Oh, let's see. The control she so carefully cultivated would melt like a grape popsicle on a late July day. I was like, that's very specific. It's a grape popsicle, and it's not a hot day or a smarmy day or a humid day. It's a late July day.
Yes.
So I like it because it's like all these little boom, 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 all these details that thrust you into knowing what kind of situation you're experiencing. And one of the things that I like about, one of the reasons probably why you keep JT out of the mix, is JT is a good cop and would actually be useful in solving problems.
Yes, correct.
So, in order for it to be a chaotic caper where can you believe that's just happened and just when they've gotten out of one pickle, they're in another. So in order to keep that going, you really do have to have JT out of the picture.
Right. I will admit that the next book that I'm just finishing up, called Chip Off the Ice Block Murder, JT is actually quite a bit involved in what's going on this time. We'll see if I can make it work.
But I'm sure there'll be more absurd, impossible, and oh my God, what the fuck is going on scenarios.
Yes, there will be.
Speaking of, we have a most unusual book giveaway in that our most generous guest, Jessie Chandler, is going to give you the series, the first 3 books in her Shay O'Hanlon Caper. In order to win, you must tell us the most absurd or ridiculous thing that has ever happened to you.
I can't wait for this.
and Jessie will be the person who will be judging. If you would like to remain anonymous, that's fine. But the most wonderful, most interesting, crazy caper-ass action you've gotten into, I think it would be intensely interesting. And for those of you who are willing, even if you are not a winner, if you want your 5 minutes of fame, I will also post the stories as PDFs for people to download. We'll see how we'll see how our responses go. But I think it's kick-ass to get like the trilogy. That's not
hilarious. Awesome.
Can you just imagine, like, what is the most craziest thing that is just so improbable that absolutely makes no sense, but actually happened in real life? So yeah, this is your moment of truth is stranger than fiction, and you get to win Bingo Barge Murder, Hide and Snake Murder, and Pickle in the Middle Murder.
And I will autograph them to you if you would like me to.
Of course, of course. So this is fantastic, folks. So you have to dig deep, think something awful that happened to you in middle school or, high school, maybe college, maybe something that should not have happened on a job interview, anything, something silly, something to make us all laugh. And I think this would be a really fun little contest.
Just lay it on us.
Exactly. And you can email your entries to thelizmcmullenshow@gmail.com. And so now we bring to a close our Crazy Caper conversation. I've enjoyed having you as a guest on the show and talking about all the craziness that happens in your capers.
I've enjoyed talking to you about the craziness that happens in my capers, and you are a very fun person to talk to.
Thank you so much. I'm touched. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night.